Hello. Now we take up the next episode of GPET, that is Geopolitical, Economic and Technological Environment, number 6. And we might do number 7. Now here these are summative comments and discussion. We may take some questions from the viewers also. So the first one is what is the difference between this unipolar and multipolar? What is the difference in terms of the multilateral organizations? Which are these? Which are the major groupings which are there? Basically economic or military or technical. These groupings have also been increasing. And the latest kids on block are BRICS, about 10 years old now, Shanghai Cooperative Organization, SCO, longer than that, and then we have ECOWAS, African Union in Africa. We of course have ASEAN, that is the Southeast Asians, which has now become quite stable and one of the largest economic groupings in the world. And then we have, of course, NAFTA and LAFTA in South America, dominated by the USA. We have the European Union, which is, of course, European nations, now about 50 of them, about 27 of them, but they are all part of NATO. And that is crossing 50 now, because you have also Canada and Australia and USA in that. And multilateral organizations, one of the examples is World Bank, IMF, and other UN supported organizations like the United Nations Food Program and so on. So now, if you go back to the history quickly, till First World War, it is the European nations who were the bigger colonial powers and exploiting their colonies. They were becoming richer and richer, but then they had clashes with each other, primarily because of the colonies, and they had the First World War, and they got weakened in that. And within that, one of the nations, Germany, was penalized quite a lot, had hyperinflation, and then started the World War II. And World War II, there was loss of life of European nations, and the colonial European nations like the UK also pulled lots of troops from the colonies and, of course, resources to fight the war and weakened them very badly. So, post the Second World War, some of these areas got divided up between USA and Soviet Union, and Germany itself got divided in terms of East Germany, controlled by Soviet Union, and West Germany. And since USA fought the war from a distance, from their own boundaries, and in the end was instrumental for closing the war by throwing 2 nuclear bombs on Japan, so they capitulated. So the influence of USA was quite strong. Its economy was still quite strong. It was a war economy. They had developed technologically also during that period, and they were making money rather than losing money, while the rest of the Europe was losing money. So bottom line is that USA became richer and more powerful, and perhaps the most powerful and richest. And Soviet Union, also because of large territories under it, was considered a competitor. But the USA was following the capitalist system, while Soviet Union was following the communist system. And emerged a new powers to be, like China, which was also partially colonized. And so 1949, they became independent. India became independent in 1947. And lots of African nations started becoming independent from there onwards till the 60s. In fact, till 80s. and even till today. And also the colonized nations in South America, especially by the Spanish interests, also started revolting and becoming more and more free. So in South America, there is both a tendency of the whites as exploiters and exploited also, and of course certainly the indigenous people were very badly exploited. So this was a game of exploitation, and for quite some time USA acted as if it was the savior of these exploited people, but slowly the capitalist interests started becoming dominant, and the mines, the natural resources, agricultural farms, etc., started going under the American companies. Now, we stop there and say that, what are the arrangements which got developed? So one was United Nations, so that there is peace amongst the nations. The independent sovereign nations became members of the UN, and today there are more than 200 of them who are members. At that time, there were about 100. There was the UN Security Council, which had 5 members, and except Soviet Union, all of them were European. And now they want to induct even European Union as a member, so that, a whole group of people from about 50 countries become members. Take it as 27 or 50, depending on what we are discussing. So, with these institutions trying to help the developing countries with low interest rates, however, developed something else, which was shooting down the exchange rate, so that those economies had to pay a lot of their local currency for doing this. Now, I just skip it a little bit and see how this Ukrainian war has developed. This is the only war in Europe after the Second World War. And in between 1995 or so, the erstwhile countries of the Soviet Union, many of them East European countries, became independent. So like Poland and Lithuania and Romania and Bulgaria and so on and so forth. And some are today also supportive of them, and some are not supportive of them. And they formed part of the NATO, which is a combination, it's a military combination with no office as such, North American Atlantic organization, in which the USA is very, very dominant. So that is the military part of it. And there have been a lot of military campaigns by USA, but under the umbrella of NATO or under the umbrella of UN. Lately, of course, UN is not wanting to do that, where they've gone to Iraq and they've gone to Vietnam and they've gone to Syria and they go to Sudan, and we counted, keep on counting about 40 countries in which they would have entered, supposedly to sort out the problems there, or terrorist problems, or so on and so forth. Now, this is the geopolitical part of it. Now we come to a little bit of the economics. Meanwhile, let us say in the Asian region, China has developed, and it's the second largest economy. It's about 1.4 billion people, just like India, which is 1.4 billion people. And the rest of the Asian countries put together will again have a billion or so. But this is the largest collection of human population in the world. And the second is the Asian economies, currently in the ASEAN, or the new tigers, which is Vietnam and Thailand, are very, very dynamic. So is also the economy of India. So we will come to some numbers there. So finishing the discussion on multilateral organization, there was a get-together of these major countries in Bretton Woods, USA, New Hampshire, which decided that there should be sort of macroeconomic control. So IMF was formed, and if there is a problem, then how do they support each other? So issue of SDRs was there, so they could be supported. But mostly, slowly, after European situation came back to normal, this was meant for the developing countries and to effect their policies in favor of private sector. And there was a World Bank which gave regular loans, not concessional, or maybe a little bit concessional, and this was the private capital which was further invested at reasonable rates. Now, why we call it reasonable? Because in our countries in the Asian region, if inflation is 6-7%, so 1% rate of interest would mean -5%. So there will be something above the regular inflation rate. But if inflation rate in Europe and USA was smaller, let's say 1%, so 1 plus 1%, 2% return would be considered sufficient. So that's the main issue there. But over a period of time, one finds that really the infrastructure projects finance has gone down. And during that last decade, what has picked up is finance from China through its own banks, and also formation of National Development Bank under the BRICS umbrella, where India, Russia, Brazil, China, and South Africa have also contributed about $20 billion founding equity. So that's $100 billion founding equity, and then they can borrow more, etc., and more equity can also come, and they have invested that in the infrastructures. So one of the major issues which comes up is that there is something called a global north and a global south. Not the underdeveloped countries and developing countries, third world countries, as it used to be called. The first word being the Western nations, and second word being the communist nations and or socialist nations, and third word being the rest of them. Now that equation is gone, because in Asia, lots and lots of countries have come up above the poverty level. In the Middle East, same thing has happened. They have also formed Arab League, and then two that is UAE and Israel and India. So lots of combinations are there. Of Maghreb region has another economic organization. Of course, Africa has this ECOWAS and AU. And the ASEAN is ASEAN. It's a free trade union among themselves, and they also deal with other organizations. So here we can see that from that unipolarity of USA, after especially the USSR was broken up, is now being challenged by these multiple organizations, including BRICS, including Eurasia, including ECOWAS, including Arab League, including the new NAFTAs and so on and so forth, led by Mr. Lula, President of Brazil. So we will see the main things coming up in the BRICS summit next month, or rather this month, towards the end of the month, which is being held in South America, and South Africa. And then by that time, you will also know that what has happened in Niger, whether the group which did the coup has had to leave or not leave, what happens to Ukraine, because the peace conference in Saudi Arabia, which is not attended by Russia or by chief executives, heads of state of China and India, would bring any results, because this was the same 10 points which Ukraine was saying. The first one of which is that Russia, goes back to its own borders as it existed 2014 before. So it's kind of not doable, and so we will see what happens then. Maybe BRIC will take some initiative, because there are now a large number of countries, and about it seems 20 to 40 applications, they say, of different countries which have come. As far as NDB is concerned, Bangladesh, UAE have already joined. There are two other countries which are just about to join there. So NDB as a bank, of course, there will be contribution from Saudi Arabia and Bangladesh also. As a bank, NDB perhaps will progress and prosper, maybe at a lower pace.